Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday. This is day 17 of James Bond Radio, I think, where we're going to be discussing our 30 Days of No Time to Die with another mailbag episode. With me, as always, is my main man, Mr. Tom Sears. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. I'm excited to dive into the mail sack once again and delve deeply into its treasures, Chris.
Ooh, and I believe there are a lot of treasures in there. So
there are.
Let's see how deeply we can delve.
We started yesterday with a big old long 20-minute rant about something completely unconnected. So let's get right on track today and stay within the boundaries. So talking point number one, Chris, comes in from Brian Quast, who you may remember from one of our previous birthday anniversary episodes. Nice fella. He says, do you think the way Eon dealt with the character reveals for both Miss Moneypenny in Skyfall and Blofeld in Spectre directly affected their approach in No Time to Die with Safin, who is clearly portraying a modern version of Dr. No? I think they dropped the ball on this for the third straight film. Everyone knew those first two, and the studio purposely baited everyone with teasing Dr. No in the trailers, but not following through with it was a major flaw distraction in this film for me, more so than the ending. P.S. What a waste of the Garden of Death. Now, Chris Wright, my question to you is, do you think he was ever going to be Dr. No?
Well, I obviously didn't watch the trailers or look into any of the social medias and anything like that, so I had no idea that it was even a thing until afterwards when I saw people commenting on it and seeing some of the set design that looked quite similar and everything. But I don't think it was ever seriously considered, if I'm honest, because the character hasn't got like the setup and everything. I just don't think it's Dr. No. And why would you? I don't get it. Like, for me, I can see why people suggested that he would, but was there anything from sort of Eon or from anything like that hinted that he might be, or is it purely speculation?
I think there's a couple of things. One is the set design is very Dr. No-y, isn't it? I think the first press shot we had of Safin looked very Dr. No-y. I think there was some shenanigans going on in the press release interviews and all that kind of stuff early on, where Dr. No was heavily referenced by Rami Malek, and apparently he did say, I don't know whether I actually saw this, I might have seen it and forgotten. Apparently he did say he didn't at the time, he didn't know what his final character name was going to be, or something like that, meaning that many people speculated that it was going to be an Oberhauser Blofeld thing, it was going to be a Safin is actually Dr. No. But for me, and he is called, they call him Doctor at one point in the film, don't they? But whether for me, Dr. No has metal hands and he topples rockets.
Not small clammy ones.
No, not small clammy ones. He topples rockets. He's not a poisoner, he doesn't have a Garden of Death. To me, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense for him to be Dr. No. Dr. No doesn't have a no mask. Again, I think no mask maybe led people up the garden path. But Dr. No never wore a mask, did he? At one point he was a monkey, and we didn't get that either. So, I can see why it might lead people to think it, but there's enough for me personally that is nothing to do with Dr. No to make me think I don't think that was what was going on there.
So you don't think yourself it was a missed opportunity to make him Dr. No?
No, I do.
You're happy they didn't go down that route?
I'm happy the only thing I perhaps maybe would have wanted, but it would have ended up in a completely different film, is that Rogue One ending where the end of No Time to Die leads in to Bond walking into the casino and sitting down at the table where Connery is at the beginning of Dr. No. Maybe something like that. But that would have been cool. I don't know if it's better in my mind than it is on screen. It would have probably been shit, if I'm honest. But yeah, maybe something like that. But yeah, to me, I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be Dr. No either. Blofeld is the only one you're allowed to bring back in my book. Never have we had a returning villain, and I doubt we ever will, apart from Blofeld.
Well, hopefully not. No, I think I'm in agreement with you. He should be the only one to come back. But in terms of, Brian mentioned the character reveals of Moneypenny, like, it was only at the very end of the film, oh, hi, I'm Eve Moneypenny, and obviously with Blofeld, Franz Oberhauser, and then find out it's Blofeld. that is very similar to a few other franchises. What they've
They
done.
did that with Khan in Star Trek, didn't
yeah,
they?
that's right.
I don't think it's ever very good. Like
No.
I see why they're doing it, and maybe you'd have gotten away with that years ago. But now, when everything fucking leaks and all the rest of it, I mean, especially Blofeld, it was so obvious that he was going to be Blofeld because the film was called Spectre. So it was just like don't do that.
In the future, just say this is Moneypenny. This is Blofeld.
Exactly. Yeah,
and it's I mean, you still got the anticipation of knowing these characters and wondering how they're going to be portrayed. That's enough of an incentive rather than trying to do the smoke and mirrors around it. I think.
And I even think the Moneypenny reveal was a bit lame. It's not like going through all of that they went through in Skyfall. There's no way she didn't tell him what her last name was. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like when they announced her as Field Agent Eve, it was like, come on. You know what I mean? It's a bit too obvious, isn't it? Yeah. So I just think, the intention behind it is great if it hits right and you get that whoa moment. But I think that's very difficult to do these days, and the chances of you actually going in spoiler free and not realizing is very, especially when the film's called Spectre now. Blofeld has to be in it, and when you cast, Christoph Waltz, that's who it's going to be, and it's just silly in my book, really, to do that. Yeah. All right, next question.
The next one.
Next question then, Chris, comes from Brer Brett. He says, the Craig era, and I think No Time to Die in particular, had a lot of fan service moments. Think Fields Covered in Oil, Hildebrand Rarities, Robert Brown Portraits. I love it all, but many don't. How did you guys generally feel about it? Chris Wright, over to you.
I think those ones I'm fine with. I remember the Hildebrand Rarities seeing it on the door, and it's very, very subtle and great. Why not? Nice little nod there. And Brett, he's right. There's been a lot in the Craig films. I think when it feels forced is when it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think it can either be really subtle, and you blink and you miss it, or it can be a bit more obvious, but it fits within the scene. Mm-hmm. And it works within the scene. And if it's either of those two, it's fine. It's when it kind of feels a bit forced or too in your face or too obvious, then it doesn't quite work. But equally, like we said, with opinions on films, people have their own opinions on these sort of things as well. And for what might work for someone is complete disaster for someone else. So it's hard because you're never going to please everyone with these things. But no, I on the whole, I think when they're done well, I'm fine with them.
Okay, so let me follow up. Hold on a minute, I've just lost it. Let me get it back again.
And what about you while you're having a little look?
Okay, so my thoughts are, I think the older I get, the less I like them, the old callbacks. Again, there are good ones and bad ones. I like the really subtle ones. I don't. So hold that thought for a second.
Yeah.
Those ones that Brett mentioned there. Fields Covered in Oil, yes or no?
Well, I know you're a no, and I'm actually a don't mind on this one.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, okay. So we differ on this. I don't mind it.
I don't like it. 2 on the nose. Yeah. 2. It's already been done better. So why do it again? Do something new. That's my review on the Fields Covered in Oil. Hildebrand Rarities, yes or no?
Yeah, totally fine with that.
It's not bad, is it? I was like, oh, look at that. It made me smile when I saw it.
But that's when it's done really right.
Subtle in it, because nobody else in that cinema knows what that is. It's reserved for us little geeks because we've read all the books and we know what the Hildebrand Rarity is. Civilians going in, they don't know what the Hildebrand Rarity is, do they? So it's just for us, and I like that more. Robert Brown Portraits. Do you like those?
Yeah, you got to, I mean, you got to, man. Yeah. Obviously, we've seen Bernard Lee before in World Is Not Enough, and it was really nice to see Judi Dench, and there was a lot of talk about her being in it, but then we saw Robert Brown as well, and I think great. For me, I like it because it's not something that wouldn't necessarily like. It could happen in real life. You've got former chiefs of MI6. Who's to say that they don't keep paintings of them in real life? It's not something that's completely outlandish. Therefore, in my book, I think it's fine.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, what about you?
Cool. I enjoyed seeing that. It was nice to see Robert Brown because he wasn't the original, He wasn't the
in-betweener.
latest one. He's like an in-between M, so it's nice that he gets a little nod. That was nice. I have a question for you. We'll put the mailbag to one side for a couple of minutes. I have a question for you. Do you think, right, Bond dies, M does his thing, I'm going to use my time, credits, before the screen goes black, end of the film, dedicated or in memory of Sean Connery and Roger Moore. Do you think we should have got that?
Well, certainly, I think so. I mean, I don't see why it didn't happen, really. Obviously they're actors. They're not producers. They're not directors. But if it wasn't for you're talking 13, 14 films if you include Never Say Never Again. Yeah. That's a chunk, like a huge chunk of the series, and they've obviously kept it going for so long. I was actually a bit. It's a real shame not to see that. In all honesty, I don't see why they weren't sort of mentioned.
I was disappointed to see it because somebody told me that at one point it was in memory of Roger Moore at the end before Sean died. That was going to be a thing. I don't know whether that's true or not. Right, that could be total bullshit. I'll put my hands up, but I heard that and I was hoping, and then of course Sean went. And I was like, okay, it would be lovely to have both of their names up there. You know, the dude who basically invented the movie Bond, and then the dude who reinvented the movie Bond and carried it through for all those movies. I feel like they deserved that. But then there was a thought that crossed my mind as well of like, why wouldn't they do that? And I did wonder whether, because we're at a point now where so many of those original people are of an age now where they're not going to be around for a whole lot longer, there comes a point where there's a lot of people you would need to include without it snubbing somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe the policy was, maybe they talked about it, but maybe the policy was like, if we thank Sean, we've got to thank Roger. And then, then there's a sort of a standard set where when the next fellow goes, whenever that is, it's like, well, we've got to mention them now. And then you've got, Peter Lamont mentioned, you've got to mention all these old fellas who were, huge parts of the franchise. And it's like, where does it stop? And I wonder whether that's why we didn't get it.
You're possibly right. I think the day, God bless him, when Mickey G goes, it will certainly have his name dedicated. And I think rightfully so. Yeah. So I think, you're probably right. There I was thinking you were going to say that, the missiles come, Bond dies, and then it fades to black and suddenly we get the Dead or Alive.
Yeah, nice. Zombie Bond. I like it.
Yeah, zombie Bond.
Righty ho. Next question is from Warren Ringham. He says, do you think Daniel Craig has had too much power and influence, especially towards the end of his run? He said in the Being James Bond doc, he took it on the proviso he would get a say on things, but I wonder if that's ended up being good or bad. Would you like to see the next Bond come in and just get on with playing the role?
So I think that's a very, very good question. And I think it's been asked by a lot of people and suggested by a lot of people. But personally, I think he's helped the series. Look where the series was before he arrived. Look where it is now. Like, Daniel's had a huge part to play in that, not just from the acting side of things, but in terms of what he wanted to bring to the character, not only his character, but to other characters as well. There's moments in there where, in that documentary, he was saying that in Casino Royale, the shower scene, they were both meant to be in their sort of underwear and stuff. And he's like, no. She'd be in shock. She'd be in there, like, still unclothed, and so would Bond. Just go and join her. And so he's brought a lot, like a huge amount. So I know some people say, well, it's not right. He's an actor. He shouldn't have been given this power. But look at the films. Look at Casino Royale. Look at Skyfall for a lot of people. Spectre for you guys. And look at No Time to Die for a lot of people. Like, he's brought, and Quantum for some people, I can't miss that. But, he's brought a lot of good stuff, man. And who's to say that he came along and didn't have a say in stuff, the films wouldn't have been as good as they were?
Well, I think there's pros and cons to it, right? That shower scene, iconic. I think that's going to go down as one of those moments that end up on the montage poster. You know what I mean? He's right. Definitely better with the clothes on than in her underwear or in the nude or whatever. And so, yes. and so the definite pro, right? And it's been important to him that I was seeing in some interviews with him recently, they said, what's like your proudest thing about your time as Bond? And he says that we did something with it. We didn't just trot out the same old thing. We really, broke the mold and rebuilt it and really did something with it. And I absolutely agree with him. Absolutely did. Took some risks, did something new.
Definitely.
And elevated Bond to higher levels than he's been probably since the 60s, really, in terms of critical acclaim as well as, fan acclaim. Definite pro. Here's a con. He doesn't like making them that often, does he? Right? So maybe if he didn't have so much creative control, we would have had more films over the last however many years it's been. You know what I mean? I feel like, obviously you had some issues with Quantum, so that, longer break before Skyfall to get it right for that. What I would deem, I think, will be a standard break going forward, which is 3 years for Spectre. Then we have a 6-year break. Obviously, it wasn't going to be 6 years, obvious reasons, but he said he felt down about it after Spectre came out and he wanted a long break and all that kind of stuff. So maybe if he had less creative control, we would have had more Bond action. And I think what it all boils down to for me with that question is it can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on whether you like what he did.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a subjective thing once again, and I think, I would say most of us are in agreement that Casino is a masterpiece, and it's like that. It might even be the best Bond film ever made, and if it's not, it's really close to it, and that's a great thing. And then I think everybody goes different ways with the following films. So yeah, I think my one complaint really is that we could have had less breaks and more. I don't know. I feel like, if I'm honest,
I don't think that's all Daniel's fault, though.
No, I do think he massively contributed, especially to the last gap. Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, pandemics and all that kind of shit was a factor, but I feel like we could have had No Time to Die come out in 2018. You know what I mean? If he didn't want his massive break, whatever. Anyway, here's my suspicion. I think Daniel has a bit of a love-hate relationship with Bond, or at least has done in the past, right? Because when you see him in interviews, Skyfall and up to and including Skyfall, he's a bit standoffish, isn't he? He's a bit grumpy with the reporters, doesn't seem to be enjoying himself all that much. And I noticed he seemed to be significantly more jovial in the Spectre days, and then significantly again off the chart jovial with No Time to Die. Like he seems happier now in interviews than I've ever seen him before. And part of me wonders whether that's a certain amount of relief that it's all over now and he can go back to living his life. You know what I mean?
Probably.
And like he says in Being James Bond, doesn't he, how like the leap to fame really affected him and he found himself locking himself indoors and closing the curtains and freaking
that's crazy,
out.
Isn't it?
That's got to be a load on your mind, man. And I can totally understand what a pressure that must be, especially with that bullshit in the press early on and all that kind of stuff, But so yeah, he's not. I don't think he's like the ambassador for the series like Roger was, where he loves it. Pierce loved it, didn't he? Connery obviously not so much, and all that kind of stuff. I have a suspicion we won't, once Bond is gone, especially when the next dude picks up the Walther. I feel like he will never want to talk about Bond ever again. Like he'll be one of those where you ask him about it in interviews and he won't want to talk about it. He'll be moving on to talk about something else. So yeah, I think he's had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, man. I do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is true. I think playing the character, the hate's not been there. I think it's everything that goes with it, with the media responsibilities and the hassle. He was saying that people are climbing up trees outside his flat trying to look in and take photos and stuff. That's not going to bode well. It's the same for Connery, wasn't it, when he went to Japan and taking a dump and they were trying to climb in his cubicle and what have you. It's not going to sit very well with you. And I think obviously people like that, and I think Tim was the same in terms of very private individuals, and it's incredibly difficult, even more so now in this day and age, for anyone in that public standing to have a private life with everything that's going on. So that has to affect you. So I think the hate is not the hate of the character or playing the character. I think he's really enjoyed it. I think there have been lots of ups and downs and difficult times, but ultimately he's glad that he was Bond. He's proud of what he's done, but it's just the outside,
the shit that comes with it. It's
exactly.
Like every job you do,
yeah,
it can be the best job in the world, but there's going to be a hefty dose of shit that comes along with it that you're not going to like about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I imagine being Bond for certain people, the amount of stuff that comes with it could be almost unbearable in some ways. Like I remember seeing Timothy on some chat show back in the day when he was still Bond, and I remember, I think it might have been Parkinson, and he asked him about like fashion or something, and Timothy was like, "It's all a con, bloody fashion. What a waste of time, blah blah." And it's like, you can't really get away with that as Bond, because you've got to sell the watches, you've got to sell the suits, you got to, and maybe obviously it was less so in those days, but like now obviously that's a huge part
you are
of
a marketing machine,
exactly,
basically, aren't you?
You are a walking billboard for this thing, and it's like knowing how important the sponsors are these days. It's like
that's part of your job. That is part of your job. It's not just you're not just Bond during filming. There's a load more that goes with it.
That's it.
Like obviously all the press stuff and everything, but that marketing side of things, the commercials and everything, that's going to be part of the contract to keep the sponsors happy.
Exactly. And does he really want to be shooting a Heineken ad? Probably not. You know what I mean?
I think he prefers Guinness, doesn't he?
Probably, yeah. I think he does, yeah. But so it's a poison chalice, as Sean used to say.
So here's a question then, kind of on the back of that. With the next person coming into play Bond, do you think they'll look at Daniel and the power that Daniel had? Obviously, became more so as he became co-producer and producer, I think, towards the end. But do you think they'll look at the influence that he's had, his say on the script and the character, and think, right, I want that as well? Or do you think they're just going to be, okay, I just want to play the character and not worry? Because I think if you're going to play the character, and you do want some sort of say, at least within the script, and feedback to the character points. But obviously Daniel had a bigger say in terms of everything, sort of style and everything as well. Yeah. Do you think the next person will have that or want that or avoid it?
Depends who it is, right? I think Daniel didn't actually want the job. And Barbara
forced him.
Had a major wide on for Daniel, didn't she? Major wide on. And she wanted him bad. And I think he managed to, maybe it wasn't premeditated or anything, but she wanted him, and so much that she would have said anything to get hold of him, basically. I think that's what it is. And that's quite a unique thing. I think, let's say Cavill is being, moistened to take on the role for the next one, and he is in line already, or whatever the story is, who knows. Let's say he is for now, just for want of a better argument. I feel like someone like Cavill would just be like, yeah, fucking sign me up, I'll be Bond. Yeah, brilliant. I think it was a unique situation to Daniel, because they had this image in the back of their mind. Because she said it was in, what film was it? She said there was a shot in a film
of him
she saw Daniel
towards the camera.
He's in a long, almost like a Sith robe from Star Wars with the hood up, and he's walking towards the camera. And she said she noticed he was the most charismatic person she'd seen on screen in years. And that one scene was what made her think, he could do Bond, his commanding walk, his commanding presence. So she was fishing for him early, man. And I think it's a unique thing. And I don't think if they were like, right, it's time for the Christopher Nolan Bond trilogy, and he's going to want Tom Hardy on board, I don't expect this to happen, by the way. I'm just saying, if let's say, that's what's happening, then Tom Hardy's definitely going to say, well, hold on, I want to say that. I want to use a strange squeaky voice like I did in Batman, or something like that, right? He's going to have his little take on it.
Yeah.
If it's Cavill, he's going to walk straight in. If it's him down in Cornwall, what's his name? The one that looks a bit like Timothy Dalton, Aidan Turner. He's going to walk straight in. You know what I mean? It's I think that's the situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you're probably not far wrong. I think definitely with Daniel, like you said, even like you said in the documentary, he didn't even want to really do it.
Yeah.
And then Barbara said they had that meeting, and then she said in the back of her mind, he really does want to do it. And Michael G. Wilson was like, really?
Yeah.
Did he? Is that what you got from this?
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
But then obviously Barbara, like you said, was pretty persuasive, I imagine.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm totally glad that they and she persisted and got their man, because he was brilliant. Yeah, good question. Good question
indeed. This one, somewhat related to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. This is from Lucas Robertson. It said, "It might just be me, but I thought Bond didn't really look like Bond in No Time to Die, and I think it may be the costume design rather than Daniel himself. I just think that some of the clothing, like the top and shorts that are too small for him at the start in Jamaica, or the green coat, white Henley and trousers combination in Norway didn't feel like things Bond would wear." I must say, I thought that as well. There's something about the look of him. I don't like the way they dressed him in this film. I think Lucas is onto something there. The looks for him were a bit weird for me, I thought, in this one, especially that green coat thing. That was a weird one. He looks cool in the tux, obviously, in Cuba.
With the green coat
is in the Norway in the when he's in the forest. I think he's got that forest. Green coat. Yeah. I think that's when he wears it. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he looks weird a bit? I
think certain bits he looks good and certain bits he doesn't. I think he looked great in a grey t-shirt, like he does it in Casino and he does it here, and I think he looks good. I think the shorts were quite tight. I think certain think people were looking at certain things on that scene on the boat, and the shorts were very tight. That is true. But no, I think. To be honest, I think he's fine in the shorts and the t-shirt. I think that get-up is fine. I really like the Henley, the 3-button white long sleeve. I think that looks great. I even like his sort of commando sweater and trousers in the finale. I think that's fine. The suit he wears in Matera, I'm a bit like, it looks almost looks a bit too rough and like in terms of a bit old.
It's an old man suit, that, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like a corduroy old man suit. Yeah,
I wasn't keen on that at all. And weirdly, the green jacket, the Norway scene, I'm going to be watching it again tomorrow, funnily enough. So I'm going to I'll have a look out for that because I can't quite pin in my head what it looks like. But there are a couple of things I definitely weren't sure about style-wise. Some things I thought were fine, but yeah, that opening, that suit that he wore, it just
didn't
seemed
like it.
No. I wasn't
the other
keen.
one, I was a bit taken aback when he's sailing to Cuba and he's got the baseball cap and shades on. I was like, Bond doesn't wear a baseball cap. What's going on there? That's a bit, and to me, that's almost as jarring as when you see Timothy in this fishing hat in the making of License to Kill pictures.
That's terrible. Imagine if they kept with that.
He looks like he's in a 90s indie band or something, doesn't he? But yeah, I don't think Bond is a baseball cap wearer. That was, so that's something that I've had that thought quietly and not really mentioned it. Is like I do think what they dress him in was a bit funky this time around.
And the suit, what did you think of the suit, when he goes to get his V8 after the trawler scene? Like that.
What's he wearing? He's got jeans on, hasn't he? I remember that much. What else is he wearing?
A tie. It's like he's got a suit. I think it's a grey suit, white shirt, black tie, I think. And when he pulls up, when he misses the curb by half.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's the business. He looks rad in that. Sorry, I was thinking the wrong thing.
No, he does look good in that. But
when he opens the garage door, isn't it? He's wearing casual. Sorry,
but I do like that jacket. The high collar. He likes the high collar, sticky up style, and I think he looks good. Like he wears similar in Quantum, and I think he looks good in that. But I think there are certain things where it just doesn't. They seem like strange choices to me. Yeah. But I think Quantum is the one where he's dressed the best and he looks the best.
Business in Quantum, doesn't he? Really good.
Yeah.
All right. Next question comes in from Mike Tack. And he says, do you think Bond was infected with the kill all Spectre nanobots in Cuba, and therefore it didn't matter if Madeline infected Bond when seeing Blofeld? Also, why wasn't that dude with the bionic eye not killed in Cuba as he was Spectre? Oh, and one last thing. If the bionic eye dude was Spectre and Bond was infected in Cuba, surely if Bond touched him, he would die anyway. Have we got some plot holes here, Chris? Because I've actually thought about that, is that if he's in Cuba, he gets all the stuff on him, all of Spectre die, apart from Primo. Never really understood why Primo doesn't die. So surely that means if Bond is already infected, then when he goes to meet Blofeld, the Madeline connection doesn't matter. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in terms of the Primo thing, in my eyes, it's just the head members of Spectre. I know they say later on every Spectre member died, but clearly they didn't because there's still people with guns. Primo's still alive. There's still loads of people around. So in my forget about everyone in Spectre. I think it's the main members of Spectre died, and then if you think about that, that's fine. In terms of this of the DNA thing, I think there's definite point for that. Like obviously he's been infected. I guess it's not addressed, but obviously he would have killed Blofeld anyway because it's already on him, and like Q says, it's eternal. You can't get rid of it. So maybe
maybe that they just did the Madeline bit just to remind us that that was a thing? Because if they didn't do that, Cuba would have been maybe too far back to remember the fact that he'd been infected with something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well. Equally, I guess the other thing is that Safin didn't know it was on Bond, so he had to give that thing to Madeline to use.
So maybe he would have died anyway, but
But and then that just how it's just like reinforced, because there might be some people that are like, well, if that didn't happen, hang on a minute, how did Blofeld die? And then unless someone tells them, oh, you remember that bit in the party, don't you? And then it's easier to just say, well, okay, he's double dosed. Something like that. But I think it's a good point. But
it's a good point, absolutely. Also, surely his EMP watch would have blown up Primo's eyeball and the nanobots inside him as well.
The nanobots inside of Bond. When he did Primo's eyeball. Well, it depends. Are they definitely affected by electromagnetic pulses?
That's the point. Because if the nanobots, because I'm thinking this could have been a way out for Bond at the end. Because if he's nanobotted, surely he could just go, EMP watch, all the nanobots are dead. But then maybe the nanobots just deliver the virus, at which point that was already too late. Maybe.
Yeah, so, I think that's how I had it in my mind.
Also, EMP watch would have destroyed the earpiece. Just saying.
That's a good point. Yeah,
we wouldn't have had earpiece.
Unless it had a Zorin microchip in it.
Might have done. So. Yeah. Okay. Next question. There, we've got time for a couple more, I think. This one is from Nicholas Barker. He says, "What are your thoughts on Bond having a blunt, pared down death scene, like just being suddenly and unceremoniously shot in the back of the head? Could have been a real gut punch like Tracy's death in Majesty's, and perhaps a better fit for Craig's Bond than the epic cinematic, emotionally cathartic death we got. Perhaps we could have done more of a happy medium between these two approaches." What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, I guess that's what Safin got, wasn't it? The 3 shots, Bond not even looking at him. I guess if it'd been the reverse and Safin had just shot Bond 3 times and that was it, I think you needed the big build-up. This is Bond.
Yeah, man.
If he's going to die, he's got to die big. He can't just get shot and then that's it. I just think as many people who are like absolutely outraged at this ending, surely there'd be even more outrage if it was just, we got shot in the back or shot in the head and that was it. And then it's like, cuts to him with a whiskey. I mean, I don't think.
Yeah, if they did like a Severine death where he's tied up and then somebody just shoots him in the face, I'd have been like, is that it? That's not how. Bond has to, if he's gonna go, it's got to be epic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So. Interesting take on it, but I think so. Yeah. Okay, what we got?
All right then. So next one, we've got time for 2 more. So second to last one. Henk Gommans says, "What do you think about the motivation of Madeline to help Bond getting over Vesper's death? I felt it was far-fetched." What do you think about that, Chris?
Okay, so Madeline's motivation to help Bond get over Vesper. So this is obviously in the pre-title. It was her decision to go to Matera. She knew Vesper's grave was there. Bond kind of must have known that as soon as she mentioned it, his thoughts would have gone straight to Vesper, wouldn't they? Because obviously, if you know that's where she is. So he must have known that she sort of had that idea to take him there for a reason, and it would have to have been to do with Vesper. And her motivation was so that Bond could kind of say goodbye or wherever he needed to get that closure. I mean, if in real life, well, I say in real life, like if someone was in that situation, it's a big step, it's a huge step. But if you believe that it means that it will give them closure and then they'll be able to live on in the relationship, then you would. I'd say, why not? So I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, Bond's clearly, like he says, he misses Vesper. He still thinks about her. Madeline knows that. Perhaps this is a way to help him, not just from her being selfish, from wanting him all for herself, but to literally help him because he's emotionally scarred. So as a partner, okay, he's thinking about his previous partner, but she still sees that it's hurting him. Perhaps this is a way that might help him. So I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah, I suppose the question is, why is she buried in Matera? But maybe maybe she had some Italian roots somewhere. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think it's too. It doesn't strike me as far fetched. I suppose the thing that could be far fetched is that the Spectre little business card sitting there and the bomb blowing up. It's like, how
they wouldn't know. Well, the
up?
bomb's been there for ages. Primo's following Bond, I think.
Yeah.
Because they knew he was going to be there. So from that aspect, I think the bomb was always going to be there. No one else was going to go to that grave except Bond. And the flowers looked as if they'd been there a little while. But if they knew Bond was coming to Matera, which they must do, they're Spectre, then clearly they can just plant the card and then make sure he goes there somehow. But yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Righty-ho. Final question of the day then, Chris, is from Nick Grandvoyne. You'll remember from the last anniversary episode from the Isle of Wight, my fellow corkhead, as we're called. Not because
corkhead.
Not. So the story goes that if you're born on the Isle of Wight, you are a corkhead. And
is this wine related or not?
No. No, it's something to do with the ships, where you would pad out the hull with cork to make it more buoyant or something.
Yeah.
But my dad used to tell me it meant you had cork instead of a brain. And that's why I wasn't very clever. That's what he always told me when I was growing up anyway. So
that's nice of him.
Yeah, cheers, Dad.
It's a good one.
So my fellow corkhead Nick, he says, Tom, Chris, would love to see you discuss alternative endings instead of Bond dying. For me, though I didn't like the idea of Bond dying, I think it was the only way to go in view of what had happened before. And you can't be a 00 with a family. So, Chris, what do you think? Is there another way this could have ended without Bond dying? Do you think you could have had the walking off into the sunset thing or not?
Well, we kind of had that in Spectre, and I just think it would be strange if, we've had it in Spectre, we've gone through all of this, but we've got it again. And it's like, well, what's the point of watching the film? It's the same ending. There'd be no different him going off with, obviously they've got Matilda, which is the extra factor, but just going off into the sunset, I don't know. For me, it just wouldn't have worked. And I agree with Nick in terms of it just seems fitting in terms of this character, in terms of Daniel's arc. And there are so many people that are really overjoyed with it, and so many people that absolutely are disgusted by it. But I know people have said before, look at Fleming, From Russia with Love, people are saying, but he didn't kill him off because he brought him back. But his intention was, From Russia with Love was going to be the last Bond book in his mind at one point. Yeah. And so, that was it. So even in Fleming, he did have intentions of killing off Bond at that point. And maybe if he had known that his last Bond was, obviously Golden Gun, I think, was published posthumously, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But if it hadn't been, maybe he would have killed him off in that if he had known. Who's to say he didn't? Yeah. So I don't think there's an argument against it being, Fleming would have done that. I think no, exactly, he definitely would have done. But in terms of alternatives, I guess the other one is you don't like the not so sures, do you? Like, as in you can interpret it, did he or didn't he, or that whole thing about him. I've seen so many funny sort of memes and pictures of him being blown off the island and then being picked up by a sub and resuscitated, and then other ones where he's wakes up on the beach and what have you. And
some people think we're going to get the amnesia storyline, and the next one's going to be a man with a golden gun take, and that means Daniel will come back, and it's just not happening as far as I'm concerned. It's not happening. No. So I don't like those things where it's left ambiguous, where you decide for yourself. I want to know, did they die or did they not? And in my book, 100% he's dead. I do have an alternate ending that I think could have worked for Daniel's Bond, right?
Yeah.
Which I call the Incredible Hulk ending, or the solo ending, if I'm going to stick to Bond. Right? In the old Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk, right? He had this thing in him And then at the end of each episode, he would just walk off into the distance because he couldn't settle anywhere because of the Hulk, and he lived this lonely existence. At the end of the solo book, William Boyd, Bond is considering settling down with this bird or letting himself have a normal life, and then he hears a crunch on the gravel outside, and he goes to check, and there's a hint that it was the villain of the book, basically, that's checking out the house. And he's standing in the back garden, and he's like, what do? Do I go back in there and have a life, like have a normal life? Or is this just, am I endangering her by doing that? And he goes, I can't do it because it's putting her in danger. So he gets in his car and just drives off into the night. And that's the end of the book. Sorry for that spoiler alert if you didn't know it. And leaving her there. And to me, that ending was brilliant, because that is Bond to me. Is like, he knows he can't live that normal life. And even like it's him driving off into the night, and the Bond's adventures are going to continue, but I'm okay with my imagination working out what that would have been. So for me, that ending could have worked for Daniel's Bond, in the sense that he maybe if you stuck with the Madeleine and Mathilde storyline, he's doing it for their benefit, that he has to live this life because I feel like there's a way you could even do it with the virus. Like if he can't be near them because he's going to kill them, but he's got to drive off into the night and be Bond, and he's not allowed to have that normal life. Maybe you'd have to rework it and not have to get involved in all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but to me that solo ending could have worked to cap off Daniel's thing, Daniel's run. For me though, I think it's really brave having him die. If you were ever going to kill Bond off, it would be with Daniel's run. And I kind of feel it's right. I feel it's for this run of story, because it's like, if you hate it and you want to feel better about it, just consider that this isn't the same James Bond as we've watched in all the other films. It's an alternate universe Bond, really, is what it is. This Bond started in Casino Royale, and he died in No Time to Die. And in between, he never met Goldfinger. He never met Dr. No. He never met, Hugo Drax. Whereas in my book, Pierce Brosnan's Bond did meet all those people. Doesn't make a lot of sense because he's not aged, super massively. So it's like, granted, there's a bit of a magical thing going on there. But in my book, that is the same thing. Pierce's Bond was once upon a time married to Tracy, as was Tim's, as was Roger's. Daniel's completely different. So if you want to feel better about it, just go down that route. Is that this is an alternate universe Bond, and it's a different Bond than in all the other films. What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, firstly, going on the solo ending, I think that is a great ending as well. I think if it wasn't for the family side of things, it would be a really interesting way to end another Bond actor's tenure. Yeah. So not with Craig. I think what they did with Craig was the best way to do it. I think because of the family side of things, the going into the night might have worked, but I don't think it would have been as useful as keeping it back for maybe the next Bond. Yeah. Say he does 4 or 5, and the end of his 5th one ends on like a solo type ending, and I think that's fine, because I think the idea is there, but perhaps not quite with this situation with Matilda and everything. But yeah, I it's tricky, isn't it? Because I'm with you. In my eyes, completely different universe, the Daniel Craig Bonds, but not everyone can see that or wants to see that. If it's Bond, it all has to be the same Bond. And then you are going to get into difficulties, aren't you? Because obviously trying to tie, but even with the others, trying to tie everything up, it's just so difficult. And if you're trying to spend your life trying to look at that, you're never going to come out of it happy, because it's just an impossibility.
Tell you what, here's a real solution.
Yeah,
just don't worry about it.
There you go.
Watch a different Bond film. Just don't worry about it. He won't die in the next one, right?
Yeah.
So just watch that and be happy with that. It's a little snapshot of time. That's all it is. Don't worry about it.
And it's not going to happen, like we said before. It's a one-off. It's not going to happen again. They won't do it again.
I was gutted when Die Another Day came out, right? I'm still gutted that Die Another Day exists, but I don't wallow in it. unless
and you
I'm
don't watch
made
it every
to for
day,
JBR. I only once every other day do I watch Die
Only
Another
once
Day
every
just
other
to
day.
even it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's one of those things. But sometimes people just love to fucking moan, don't they? They love to get miserable. And again, I'm saying this, I'm not saying to anybody who didn't like the film, absolutely can totally understand if you didn't like the film.
Yeah.
What I'm saying this to is those people who thrive on like pissing on other people's opinions and stuff like that. You know, all over social media. And watch The Social Dilemma on thing. That harks back to yesterday's episode. But watch Social Dilemma on Netflix, and that's a good thing to do.
I did see one interesting comment actually, which was on towards the end when Bond is with Madeline, Matilda, and Nomi, and they've got the boat, and obviously they see them go off into the light. Why didn't Bond get in the boat with Madeline, Matilda, and Nomi stay on the island to open the doors and to do all of that?
It's a good question.
Because that's his family there, and she's the young whippersnapper 00.
Yeah, should have been.
Either she stays on with him, and something happens, or why didn't she go and do it, and then Bond sails off happily with Madeline and Matilda? But there we go. Wouldn't have had the impact though, would it?
Wouldn't have. If Nomi was the one stood at the top, everyone would be like, "Oh, that's a shame." But there would have been no tears. But hey,
no, that's it.
All right, that about rounds out today's episode. It was a lot of fun. JBR will return tomorrow with more 30 Days of No Time to Die action. Not 100% sure which episode it will be yet, but we've got some more No Time to Die action.
We could potentially have a third mailbag at some point. Maybe not. We might have a roundtable discussion at some point. We might have one or two other things. So it's a bit uncertain at the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. But we will rest assured, JBR will return tomorrow morning with more No Time to Die action involved. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright, and thanks everyone for sending in your messages and your comments and your questions. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And we will see you in the morning, everybody.
Yeah. See you then. Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.